so now you should have 4 pieces of fabric that you've cut out. You've got 2 in your main fabric and 2 in your lining fabric, and they should all be this shape when you open them out. So the next stage is to start sewing together your main fabric pieces and your lining fabric pieces. So I'll show you how to do this. So we'll start with the main pieces. Now you want to lay them on top of each other with the right size together. This can be a little bit tricky with the duck fabric to tell which is which, but the right side is slightly smoother than the wrong side. So that's the right side. So we're going to have that facing up, and this one, that's the right side, so I'm going to have that facing up. So you're going to lay them on top of each other, and you're going to start pinning them together. So we want to pin down the straight side and the bottom edge and ignore this square at the moment. So if you take your pins, try and line it up as straight as you can. Pop your pin in perpendicular. It's much easier to remove when you're sewing, so you have that blob on the end of your pin sticking out just like that. So we're going to pin maybe kind of 3 inches apart, that sort of distance. Line it up really nice and straight. Just bear with me while I do this, and then I'm going to show you how to start sewing it together. So everything I'm showing you now is for the main piece of fabric, and then the next stage is going to be to do exactly the same again for the lining piece. So you're going to end up with 2 complete pieces, one for the outside and one for the inside, and then we start sewing the handles. So nearly there. Just do this last side. So I've got 3 pins in each side. There we go. So my pinned together piece of fabric looks like that. Okay, so we're going to start sewing. We're going to sew 3 straight lines. We're going to sew down this edge, across the bottom and up this edge, and we're going to ignore these cut out squares at the moment. So I've got my sewing machine threaded up. I've used navy blue thread just so you'll be able to see it against the white, but you'll use the white thread that comes with the kit so it's nice and invisible. So a really good idea before you start sewing is just to have a little test on a piece of scrap fabric that's the same weight as the fabric you're about to sew, just to make sure the tension's right. So I've got my sewing machine set to a normal straight stitch and a medium length. So on this sewing machine it's a 2. It'll depend a little bit on your sewing machine, but something that's a medium length stitch. So I've got an offcut that I cut from around the edge of the bag pattern when I cut it out. So I'm just going to have a little test stitch to make sure my stitches are nice and straight and there's no looping or strange tension or anything going on. So I've put my fabric under the machine, I've put the presser foot down, and I'm just going to sew in a straight line. So that looks pretty good to me. Yeah, so we've got a nice straight line of stitches, nice and smooth on the other side, no weird looping or anything going on. If you do find there's any looping or if it doesn't look quite right, check the manual for your sewing machine. It may be that you need to adjust the tension, or you maybe need to rethread the bobbin, but it will depend a little bit on your individual sewing machine. So you need to then start thinking about how you're going to sew your bag together. So I'm going to start on the right hand side. You're just going to sew a straight line from the top to the bottom and stop. It's really important to remember that you do some back stitches at the beginning and the end of each line so your thread doesn't come undone. So I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to go forward a few stitches, and then I'm going to go backwards a few stitches, and then I'm going to keep going, and that's going to keep it nice and secure. So the seam allowance for this pattern is 1 centimetre. So if you're not sure what that looks like on your sewing machine, use your tape measure and check where 1 centimetre is. So on my sewing machine, it's the first line on the plate. So I'm going to line the edge of my fabric up with that first line. So I'm going to go forward a few stitches. On this sewing machine I've got a reverse lever here, it'll depend a little bit on your own. And then I'm going to go back a few stitches, and then I'm going to take that first pin out so it doesn't get in the way. So take your pins out before you get to them, try not to sew over them because it can break your needle. So I'm going to do one big straight long line now to the bottom, taking the pins out as I go. First row of stitching. I'm just going to cut that off, and you can see there I've got the first row of stitching from top to bottom. So the next stage is going to be to do the same thing again across the bottom and the same thing again at the other side. So you're going to have 3 lines of stitching and you're going to have these corners open, and then you're going to do exactly the same on the lining piece.